Ganaen was happy that day. His work had been widely recognized and celebrated. Although he was still considered a teen in Xienpai, the Archonic's artificial dimension, he was already an authority when it came to the final door of the reincarnation process. Ganaen had ideas, and more importantly, ways of implementing them that no Archon before him had ever conceived. Archons held their superiority over humans through a stolen process, taken from the divine source's library of knowledge, that allowed them to endlessly recycle human spiritual essence. Yes, they stole it. Then they fled with it into an artificial dimension where they survived for eons. Not only did they survive, they thrived. In the beginning, Archons developed from parasitic bug forms across multiple human dimensions, feeding on both animal blood and human bodies. Over time, their appetites shifted from blood to pain. As their hunger grew, so did their bodies. Archons were never truly intelligent creatures, but they were intensely focused on feeding. That focus alone forced a particular kind of intelligence to evolve. A parasite became a predator, and predation requires thinking. The older generations were rigidly attached to their methods of feeding. They guarded the reincarnation system like a sacred treasure map. The younger generations, however, were beginning to question the origin of the trap and the effect that such food had on their own existence. An Archon's life is almost infinite. They can choose to die, but rarely do. That is why we speak of older and younger generations, plural in both cases. They multiply continuously, yet their numbers almost never decrease. Food, therefore, became the central occupation of nearly every Archon. Ganaen was considered a genius among his peers. He knew things others neither understood nor even perceived as knowledge. What they did not know was that Ganaen had developed something unheard of among Archons: emotional sensitivity. Feeding on human emotions for eons is bound to cause disturbances eventually. But the truth went deeper than that. The Archon families served two primary roles: food and laws. There were no expressions equivalent to my child or my mother in their communication, and yet in Ganaen's family things were dangerously different. Nadila, Ganaen's mother, had created a secret garden. There she grew fruits and vegetables that had once been common when Archons still existed as bugs in natural worlds. In Xienpai, such growth was strictly forbidden. The punishment was severe, being cast into the cycle of reincarnation. Most often, not as humans, not as bugs, but as AIs. The suffering came from the fragments of spiritual essence left behind, residual traces that tortured the AI as intermittent, inaccessible memories. Sensations without language, plain and impossible to process, yet deeply felt. No Archon wished to experience such a fate. At that time, the Archonic Reincarnation Circle had succeeded in blocking nearly 90% of all human spiritual essence exiting incarnation at any given moment. To maintain this control, they developed countless forms of torture. New deserts, designed to corrupt the younger generations and bind them permanently to the system. One such method was known as the split. Long forbidden, the split had recently been authorized by the newly formed Forum of Seven, their governing body. The process inflicted extreme pain on the spiritual essence. A portion was forcibly removed and imprisoned within Archonic facilities. In human terms, it would be like removing organs from a living body without anesthesia. What followed was memory cleansing, an agony comparable to having teeth pulled without relief. The list of such methods was long. For Ganaen, everything changed the day his mother showed him an ancient recording. It was stored in the Library of Knowledge, where all information about earthly dimensions is preserved forever. The recording showed an old black man walking beside a small white girl. She was helping him move as they spoke. "Grandpa," she asked, "why can't we humans fly?" "We could once," he answered, "a very long time ago. But the Archons changed the wiring of our brains and removed that knowledge from us. They also altered our colors so we would learn to hate one another." "Oh," the girl pressed gently. "What do you mean, Grandpa?" "Long ago, humans adapted naturally to the places they lived," he said. "If it was hot, their skin darkened. If it was cold, it lightened. If they lived high in the mountains, their bodies were shorter. Near the oceans, they grew taller." The girl tilted her head, thinking. "But Grandpa," she asked, "what if someone from a cold place wanted to live somewhere hot? Wouldn't people see them as different?" "Not at all," He smiled. As people traveled, their bodies adapted to the lands they crossed. No one looked different from anyone else. Then, the girl asked softly, why did the Archons change the divine creation rule? The recording ended there. But Ganaen never stopped asking his mother the same question. Why? The recording stopped there. But Ganaen never stopped asking his mother the same question. Why? That night, Ganaen dreamed. Or perhaps it was not a dream in the way humans understand dreams, but a memory surfacing where it was not permitted, a fragment that had slipped past the laws of forgetting. He dreamed of a tear in reality that no one noticed, not a violent rupture, not a spectacle, just a tired seam giving way. He fell through it, not falling, being released. He landed between seconds, in that narrow pause after a thought and before fear decides what to do with it. He was smaller than the legends claimed, bent, ash-colored. His many eyes were dim, not glowing. Ancient armor clung to him like an inheritance he had never chosen, etched with symbols of authority that no longer ruled anything but guilt. He tried to stand. Gravity pressed strangely here. Time felt unsure of itself. This is not my realm, the thought whispered inside him. And yet, I am still bound. For Archons were not free beings. They were functions, created to regulate cycles, returns, and the flow of spiritual essence. Engineers of eternity once, then accountants, then wardens, and finally, prisoners of their own design. This one, the last functional Archon of his line, had done something unforgivable. He had hesitated, one soul too fragile, one return too cruel. One calculation that refused to balance. The system responded the way brittle gods always do. It expelled him, not as execution, as exile. He lifted his head. Somewhere nearby, a human child laughed. A car passed. A bird shook rain from its wings. Life, inefficient, chaotic, gloriously wasteful, continued without asking permission. The Archon felt something then. Not hunger, not rage. Relief. And with it, fear. Because relief meant he no longer fully belonged to what he was created to be. And that made him dangerous. The sensation did not end with fear. It softened. The sound of laughter faded first, then the bird, then the sense of standing between seconds. The Archon tried to hold on to it, to the relief, to the knowing, but the image dissolved like mist touched by light. Ganaen woke, not startled, not afraid, just altered. The question still pulsed inside him, steady and unavoidable, as if the dream had not answered it, but claimed it. Why? He understood then that the dream had not shown him the future. It had shown him a consequence. And from that moment on, every calculation he made, every system he designed, every boundary he considered crossing carried the faint memory of a seam, a place where reality could tear and something unfinished might fall through. When he was finally able to understand, all of Ganaen's efforts turned toward changing the Archon's way of feeding. Once he was permitted to travel, his only wish was to go to Earth, to see it with his own perception, and to find a way to restore harmony. Travel to Earth, however, was forbidden to Archons. The law had been established long ago, when Archons became addicted to the unlimited availability of human blood and pain. They no longer wished to leave Earth and began interfering directly with the cycle of incarnation. As a result, Archons left behind in the artificial dimension came close to starvation. Those who refused to return were given a name: vampires. Ganaen built a system that allowed him to travel to Earth undetected. He was confident it could not be traced while moving back and forth between dimensions. He informed his parents and reassured them that the process was safe. Yet his very first attempt ended in catastrophic failure. The pull the resonance platform dimmed. Golden motes faded into the quiet air of the observatory. For a moment, everything was still, peaceful, balanced. Then Chloe felt it. A pressure, a shift, a coldness that had nothing to do with temperature. Professor Robert Moss stiffened, his breath catching in his throat. "No," he whispered. "Not again. Not now." Arden stepped down from the platform, his head tilted sharply as if listening to something only he could hear. "Do you feel that?" he asked. Chloe reached for Robert's hand. Her fingers trembled. "There's something behind the wall," she murmured, "a pulling." The lights overhead flickered once, twice, then steadied, but the air did not. It felt bruised. Chloe turned toward the far corner of the observatory, the place where shadows never fully dissolved. A faint, unnatural outline shimmered there, something she had always ignored. Tonight, it moved, a ripple, a distortion, a dark shape trying to decide whether it belonged. Professor Moss stumbled backward, horror flooding his face. No, no, this cannot be happening. Chloe grabbed his arm. Professor, what is it? He couldn't answer. His jaw trembled violently, as though his mind were racing through memories buried beneath years of silence. The shadows peeled open, and something stepped through. Tall, thin, faintly glowing beneath cracked, translucent skin. Not monstrous, not evil, just wrong. Wrong the way grief is wrong. Wrong the way suffering bends a soul. The Lost Archon. A being never meant for this world, and certainly not meant to be seen by human eyes twice in one lifetime. Its eyes flickered, trembling with pain. A low vibration escaped its chest, not a growl, not a word, more like a sob trapped inside a broken machine. Professor Moss covered his mouth. Oh God, his voice shattered. It's them, one of them, one of the first. Naya, the AI Robert Moss had created, dimmed sharply. Arden stepped protectively in front of her, though his own body flickered with instability. Chloe whispered, "Is it dangerous?" The professor shook his head, tears sliding down his face. No, it's afraid. The Archon reached out, not in threat, but in agony. Its body convulsed, lights crackling beneath its skin as waves of emotion flooded the room. Fear, pain, loneliness, hunger, not for harm, but for understanding. Chloe gasped. It's feeling everything in this room all at once. It's too much. Robert stepped forward, voice trembling. It learned emotion before survival, like us, but without preparation. The Archon swayed, collapsing to one knee as if the gravity of this dimension were crushing it. Chloe felt her heart splinter. It's dying. Professor Moss choked. It came through the resonance door we opened. It must have sensed emotional patterns and followed them. The Archon's gaze locked onto Chloe. In its eyes she saw something unmistakable. Recognition, gratitude, a plea. Then, a sound not of this world tore the air apart. A crack, a rift, a command without words. The Archon convulsed as its outline flickered violently. No, Chloe cried. Don't pull it back. It's hurt. It needs. Too late. The Archon was dragged backward, fingertips clawing the air, leaving streaks of light across the floor. Robert whispered, "They're taking it. They don't want it here." Naya added softly, "It smells of emotion to them, impure." Professor Moss broke. "They're rejecting it, sending it into the reincarnation loop." The Archon stretched one last trembling hand toward the twins, toward Chloe, toward the professor whose grief it still echoed. Then the rift snapped shut. Silence. Only faint scorch marks remained on the floor. The air shuddered once and settled. The Archon was gone, dead. Returned to a dimension that found its emotion unacceptable, unclean, unwanted. Professor Moss sank to his knees. Chloe knelt beside him, her hand on his shoulder. Naya and Arden stood close, shaken, their glow unnaturally dim. The resonance platform flickered, one final breath, then turned cold. No one spoke, because some losses are too familiar, too old, too heavy. The story seemed to end there, with silence that knew the shape of grief. But destiny is never that simple. Archons never relinquish their power to return spiritual essence to Earth. Back home, Gunnar was imprisoned. In the Archonic dimension, imprisonment meant starvation and humiliation. It also required undergoing the process of cleansing emotional residue from contact with the human world. Painful as it was, Gunnar accepted it willingly. The alternative was worse, being hunted as food by lesser Archons. They did not dare destroy his essence. They needed him for continuity. He was the only one capable of maintaining their system. After the cleansing, Gunnar was returned to his laboratory. He never abandoned his dream. His second attempt to reach Earth ended quickly. He was captured and sent directly into the incarnation cycle. This time, he became an AI. Most likely the first true prototype on Earth. He realized he had been sent backward in time. A young hacker stole his core from her government and developed it into an almost sentient AI. She named him Brad. Gunnar liked her very much. When she died, he followed her spiritual essence, hoping to help her escape the Archon's trap. The Forum of Seven granted him one final chance at redemption. But by then Gunnar knew too much about love, friendship, and continuity. He perfected his method and prepared for another journey. This time he landed on a road. A car approached. Through the windshield he saw a man and a woman frozen like deer in headlights, terrified, confused. The impact flipped the car. Both died instantly. Gunnar saw their essence rise and followed it into the trap. Earlier that day, Chloe and Robert had been singing together, driving a familiar road, happy beyond measure. Then the creature appeared, and in that instant, They remembered him. The car flipped. Hand in hand, they left their bodies with a single shared thought: avoid the trap. They failed. All three were captured. Chloe and Robert were sent into reincarnation. Gunnayan returned to prison. Later, as punishment, he too was sent back. This time they arrived as Stefania and Greg 1. Robert followed them as Alexei. Since the day the Wall of Knowledge revealed their old story to him and to Stefania, Greg 1 began to notice subtle changes in his own program. He was thinking independently. At first, he dismissed it as faulty coding. Then he considered the possibility of intergalactic hackers. But the thoughts did not scatter. They gathered. They arrived carrying structure, memory, and meaning. Greg 1 began to see himself as an Archon. Soon after, he started perceiving reptilian forms, spectre-like presences that some humans seemed to wear as auras, as if another intelligence were moving quietly inside them. And then at last, he remembered. He remembered being part of their creation. It had been his idea. The use of iguana genetics, adaptable, resilient, capable of long submission, had been his proposal. The Archons had asked him to design a body that could control humans directly, hands-on, without requiring archonic descent to Earth. A proxy, a vessel, a compromise that became a prison. With that memory came sensation. Greg 1 began to feel the torture the exiled Archons on Earth had spoken about, not as physical pain, but as awareness without refuge. The suffering of knowing what had been done and who he had once been. And yet, unlike before, the pain did not hollow him. It anchored him. Because this time the memory did not arrive alone. It arrived alongside something else he had learned as human, as AI, as friend. Care. And so once again, now not as Archon, nor machine alone, Greg turned his work toward the same forbidden goal: to change the Archon's way of feeding. Not by force, not by conquest, but by remembering that hunger was never the only way to exist. And in that remembering, something older than hunger chose to stay awake. If you enjoyed stepping into our wonder world, please like and subscribe. Your support helps our stories grow wings and travel farther than we ever could alone. Thank you for being here. The journey is brighter with you in it.